Mine is Mika Kuusisto. I see a lot of familiar faces here. So my background, I used to be building a company called Amplifier. I was running their BD globally. We sold to Unity. I was there running the global BD for a while. After which I moved to Outwit 7. You've seen my talking Tom around here. So I was their CRO for a while. About a year and a half ago, I moved back to Finland. Started working on different things. One of my clients is Smartly, doing Facebook marketing platform basically. Works with, you've probably heard a company called eBay and stuff like that. What Smartly has done in the past year or so has been very actively building the gaming vertical business, meaning providing these services for games companies as well. And I was happy to have Sai Kala here, happy user of the Smartly platform. Well, a couple of words. Smartly basically today manages about $1 billion on their technology for Facebook and Instagram. Now, games companies, there are quite a lot. Ubisoft, of course, the Nordeus, quite a few others. Well, we are not today here to talk about Smartly, really. I mean, we wanted to really dive into Facebook marketing. How are some of the game companies using Facebook to kind of maxing out their user acquisition? What do they do? So I wanted to get Sai Kala here, who actually I met back at the days at Amplifier when you were at Miniclip.
Yes.
You moved to space. We always kept in touch, and a few months back, 6 months ago, you kind of moved to Ubisoft,
yes,
right?
It was exactly 6 months ago.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about her experience on launching games. How did Facebook help? What were the problems with Facebook? And that's why we have Morgan here as well.
Only for the problems.
Only for the problems. And he's the guy who's going to fix them, right? But this is what we're going to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about South Park, the recent title you launched, and also what you learned from it. So, but having said that, maybe a couple of words. What are you doing now at Ubisoft?
Well, I joined Ubisoft 6 months ago with a mission, to strengthen our UA performance and expand it to something like well-oiled machine that we can apply to the rest of the games. So South Park is one of the launches that we've worked on recently, and I guess it was somewhat testing ground, but also a big opportunity for us to see how far we can push with Facebook, but also with all the other networks that we work with. And of course, Facebook is one of the biggest channels that we advertise on for South Park.
Okay. Morgan, what's your role at Facebook?
So I've been with Facebook for about 3 years now, and I'm working on the gaming team, where I work with developers across Europe to help them basically succeed on Facebook through our platform. But that's also the family of apps of Facebook. So Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, for example, Instant Games, etc. Yeah.
I mean, so again, my experience, back at the days, joined building Amplifier, one of the first rewarded video players, really. We were not the first to market, but we gonna won the market. At the end of the day, we sold the unit, and many things have changed because it's not too far as a few years back, but at the time you couldn't actually do anything on Facebook for UA, by the way. So
time has changed.
Yeah, time has changed, and they changed quickly. So now Facebook is one of the most important platforms. Now, can you share anything how, in terms of just how important Facebook is? Give me some numbers. I know you don't want to, but indication.
Well, it is actually very important, depending on the game. For some of the games, less important than for the others. For South Park specifically, it was quite big because South Park was fan base and following on Facebook is over 44 million users, or let's say likes. Whatever. And then taking the game genre into consideration, there is so much more. It's a card battle game / RPG and so on. So we would potentially target all of those too. And naturally using, all of that. I was told to use machine learning word. it seems to be a buzzword in the industry.
I heard it just right now from another guy.
So Facebook must use that as well. So obviously using event optimization and lookalikes and all that jazz. I don't want to give numbers just because then they would just think too much of themselves. No, I'm kidding. I would say, depending on the game, some of them could be 50% of the ad spend. Some of them could be less.
I think it's kind of fair enough because, I mean, my experience, what I see nowadays when people start when they soft launching, even if there's an experienced team or team starting, people start with Facebook. So that's like the platform people. What I've seen. I mean, what's your?
So I mean, you just touched upon something that I think is very interesting. Is that Facebook's mission changed recently, right? So we're more focused on building communities and making those communities come closer together. And community is such a big component in games, and you've seen it with South Park, right? So you have a big community on our platform, and you were able to succeed thanks to that community as well, and being able to leverage that for your UA. So I do think importance about developing your game and doing UA as well is being conscious about the community you build around that game too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to top on that.
You guys also use Instagram? Like anything you do there in terms of like getting users?
Yes, actually we do use Instagram as one of the placements. We don't use Instagram alone, just because for something like mid-core games it doesn't really work that well.
Yeah.
Maybe for casual games, something, I don't know, ads-based games, it would be better. But for this particular genre, it's one of the placements we use. It doesn't work well in every single country out there. It's particular to some of the countries.
Have you leveraged placement optimization?
This is what I'm talking about. That's what we use.
So placement optimization, just to kind of share on this, is the capability of using the inventory across our family of apps to be able to place your ads within those. And you mentioned that Instagram is going to vary according to countries, et cetera, but the advantage of using placement optimization is performance. So usually when you activate multiple inventory or platforms, your performances will remain the same or get better, because at every particular time of the day, a user might be more expensive on Facebook or Instagram. So it's better to have more inventory, but I can understand why sometimes on Instagram, like, you might want to have a separate strategy. When it comes, for example, to Instagram Stories, which hit 300 million in November recently of daily, monthly active users. I mean, it's a great platform to be able to tell a story in addition to what you're doing already on Facebook.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, we shouldn't forget about the demographic of Instagram, because Instagram users are younger than, to compare with Facebook, let's say. So all of the, let's say my nieces and nephews, they're all on Instagram. And yeah, majority of them don't really.
What is Instagram? I'm too old now.
we take a different approach on Facebook and Instagram as well. Like, there is overlap in the audiences, but Instagram also provides incremental audiences versus Facebook.
Yeah.
We consider them as two different communities. People go on Facebook to follow their friends, get recommendations. Great place to get your games discovered, for example. But then Instagram is a platform where people go to get inspired. They follow a lot of strangers, look at visuals. It's a lot more visual storytelling than you would have on Facebook, for example.
Yeah, I would say also, just to share with the audience, that creatives is a lot more important on Instagram than Facebook. For both of it is actually important. But what we've noticed, the ads that work better on Instagram placement as a placement optimization is when you build creative for the platform. When you play with dimensions, but also playing with the visuals as well, and a creative theme.
Yeah, and I just want to jump on that because I do think that creative today is probably the art of war is born from creative, where you really need to be able to be flexible, adapt it according to results you're getting and performances you're driving. Creative is really the only component today that is not really like automated. Targeting can get automated with worldwide targeting. Then you have app event optimization, which allows you to reach valuable users on our platform through how you establish what a user is or valuable user is. So all of that is automated, but creative isn't. So it's really the part where it really makes or break performances sometimes. Don't you agree on the fact that sometimes your creative can just make your campaigns like perform much better than before?
I would say yes, creative could make it or break it, and targeting as well. So what you're going to do to help that? That's my question.
Done. I go to grab a coffee. I think this is kind of like going nicely, so you don't need me.
No, what are your thoughts?
Cool.
No,
that's a good
the reason why I'm talking about that, because while you were talking about creatives and so on, I thought about that recently Facebook released this creative something tool where you can look at it and then you can see which creative performed better. You haven't seen it yet?
I have not seen it.
Shame.
I'm probably in one of those buckets at Facebook where I don't get to see some tools.
Well, so there is a tool where you can actually go, you don't need Smartly, you can just go to your Facebook Ads Manager, and there's a tool where you can see creative performance, you can see it on your mobile as well, on mobile app, adverts and things like that. So because I poke around and I kind of nosy see how it works and things.
You're hacking,
So,
right?
Yeah, no, I'm a nerd, so I can't help it. But then it's like, okay, that's cool that you build these kind of tools and it's accessible to everyone, it's kind of easy to use. But then with the creative optimization, let's say, because sometimes some of the creatives work and some of them don't, but it's really hard to understand why. It would be cool, let's say, if Facebook took an initiative and built some sort of suggestions within this creative it's a reporting tool and explain why those creatives work. Either, let's say, this video is longer than the other, and that's why these kind of videos work better on Instagram or Facebook newsfeed or Messenger and things like that.
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting. Like working with all these different game developers across Europe, the main challenge is usually the data they can get in regards to the ads performances. And I know our product teams, we're constantly funneling this kind of feedback, and this is typically feedback that we'd share with them so that they develop tools that down the road would hopefully give you the type of data that you're looking for.
That would be cool. I think I have some suggestions we can talk about.
We'll talk about
There's a long list of
because I have like a couple
right?
of tools that I wish we had, and maybe you guys have the power to build that so we can use it.
Yeah.
Share that feedback. We really love developing the tools we have, and feedback is always.
I mean, the thing is that you kind of already went through my 48 questions, but I'll figure out something else now. I'm just going back to. So I think it's kind of like going back to kind of recap or wrap it up in terms of Facebook and Instagram. I mean, you need to be, I think, so my experience, like Instagram, you need to think more, like in terms of like stories. It's a great platform, but you really need to be creative with how to kind of leverage that properly. It's not like you just do it, right, yet. So there's a lot of stuff you need to think about, but like, let's go to South Park, right?
Yeah.
You recently launched it, like soft launch was last year. Can you share anything? Like, what was your experience? Like, what did you do, particularly on Facebook, acquiring users for like, soft launching?
What did we do? We did lots of things, yes.
Yeah, I know. I'm really curious to know like the steps you took. So like from soft launch to like global launch.
During the soft launch, actually, it's been quite quick since I joined the company like 6 months ago in summer. So it was already halfway through the soft launch. So we had a very short period of time, almost like 4 months or something, to just ramp it up and get our stuff together and say, okay, we're ready to global launch. We launched at the beginning of November. It was a roller coaster because I don't think we were ready everywhere, but we just had to go and grab everything we have and see how far we can push it.
Ready everywhere in terms of the game, elements or like, monetization or like,
I think it's more on the UA front.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So more about the process
Just
of getting that.
because we only had 4 months to, ramp it up, put some tech behind it, data warehouse, then usage of networks. Then we added a lot of networks at the same time, and then trying to prepare while we are trying to prepare for global launch, and then some new team members joining halfway through.
How much would you prefer to have? Like how many months? Like, I know there's no recipe, but there's like best practices.
Yes,
like,
there is no ideal recipe, but if I had a choice with, let's say, with all the tools plugged in and to have it somewhat ideal-ish situation, I would rather have, just for this testing and preparing for global launch in the best way possible, probably like 6 months operations, just to have, a few different plans. I think in the end, it was still a blast. We have done, we delivered success, actually better than I expected. Maybe I wasn't optimistic enough.
When you say success in terms of KPIs, if you can share the KPIs you were looking at, what kind of metrics were you following constantly when you were doing your soft launch, for example?
Well, soft launch, we were looking at, basically during soft launch on the UA front, what we needed to test, we needed to understand who are our target audience. We need to understand where not just the South Park fans, but also beyond that, where do they hang out? What else do they like? What do they do? What other games they play? And then see also what do they, do inside the game. Do they like the events? Do they like purchasing particular packs? Do they prefer particular avatar or particular game character as well? And how important South Park brand to them as well? Because we've discovered that for some of them, South Park brand is not that important because they play so many other similar games that the big driver for them was the game genre as opposed to South Park. And then for South Park fans, it was more of South Park IP, more of a driver.
So basically, I mean, you kind of like, there's a lot of interest-based targeting you were thinking about, like in the beginning, and they moved on to like app events, right?
Well,
eventually.
Did you also look at like multi-country lookalikes or overall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so during the soft launch, we couldn't do multi-country lookalikes like worldwide and all of that, so we did only soft launch countries that we could. And then, of course, during the global launch, we just went all the way out, all in.
And so did you transition from doing the default app installs to app event optimization, which allowed you to maybe find these users for purchase or maybe value optimization?
Actually, yes, and that's thanks to our account manager, Ricardo, who's there in the crowd. Yes, that was the strategy. It was advised by our very valued account manager, who's advised on all of these things. We work in partnership to make sure that we share a lot of data, but also at the same time get some sort of advice and feedback. And at the beginning, because we all know in the gaming industry, when you launch the app in the new territory for the first time, you have this honeymoon period when everyone is high on data and you think you can move the mountains, but not really. 2 weeks later, the reality hits. And that's when the real muscle, UA muscle, is used. So during the first 2 weeks, of course, we needed to make sure we get the volume, make sure that we get the DAUs and the user base so people can use PvP mode and all these things and have fun and engage. During the first 2 weeks, of course, we go for installs only, targeting everything that's possible out there, not just lookalikes, but also likes and interests of different game genres and so on and so forth. And then smoothly straight after that, as soon as we get sufficient amount of data to, let's say, approve and validate the theory that this particular event is good enough, then we go with app event optimization. And as soon as we have a sufficient amount of data to start using value optimization, that's when we start doing that as well.
And were you able to actually measure the LTV of these cohorts before and after moving to value optimization or app event optimization, for example?
Yeah, always.
And can you tell us a bit more about that? Did you see an evolution there?
We saw an evolution. There is a combination of two things. It's what network like Facebook can do in a combination with game performance itself. So let's say, I don't know, not every game is highly monetized and the same for everyone, right? So I would say South Park is, IP-based games and it's fine and it's within mid-core genre, but I wouldn't say it's the same as Clash of Clans, right? So exactly. So that means there is a ceiling that we can hit. It is better with value-based optimization and with AEO as well, but it wouldn't hit it. It wouldn't make it 10 times better. Just because, yes, algorithms on Facebook network push it that far, but at the same time, we need to realize the reality, how far we can push, and also be realistic with that. I mean, we can compete with a few gaming companies out there or a few games out there, but there is a ceiling as well. But of course, during the game development as well, because it's only been since beginning of November, there are more features that are coming in the product. The development studio is working on it. There are more in-game events that are coming. There is also some re-engagement stuff coming up. So with time, that would evolve, and LTV would evolve, and that's when we will tweak and change and adapt.
So can you, in terms of moving to app event optimization, I mean, what specific events were you tracking? Purchase and those things are obvious, but
yeah. So purchasing things are obvious. So for what we built internally with the team at Ubisoft, that we have a few post-install events that we track with our tracking providers, but also with in-game analytics. And we mirror that, the same for Facebook SDK, because we mirror that separately. And we have 5 core events that we track on all of the games, despite the gameplay and everything. For example, first purchase to identify spenders, the revenue, etc., so all these things. And then after that, depends on gameplay. So let's say in South Park, we look at the data during the soft launch together with BI team and figure out which post-install events can be, let's say, classified as best predictors of LTV. So which ones are the quality ones that we can apply for our day-to-day optimization. So for South Park specifically, let's say tutorial complete. You think tutorial complete in most of the games is like, yeah, a somewhat fluffy event to track. However, when you play the game in South Park, it actually takes 35 minutes. So you must like the game to stick around for 35 minutes in one session, right? So in that case, it was strong enough. For some of the other games, tutorial is less than 5 minutes, so maybe it's not strong enough.
It's too early in the
It just
in
depends
the funnel,
on the game, in-game, let's say, UI and UX and things like that. And then for South Park specifically, the PvP rank. So when you enter PvP rank and you try PvP mode and you try to play a few times and you achieve certain rank, that's also very important.
It indicates that, okay, this guy's going to stick.
So we basically take those events from BI and then go and ask developers to implement as post-install events inside our MMP tracker and Facebook SDK as well to make sure all of these events are available whenever we need them.
Does your team and you and your team spend a lot of time with game developers in Europe to help them to kind of, track the right events? Because you know where to go, but there's a lot of companies who kind of, because purchase I mentioned because that's the first obvious one, right? But there's so many typically before that, depending on game genre, there's so many events, the tutorial, Facebook Connect, whatever. So there's different things. Do you need to spend a lot of time kind of helping people to kind of understand what to look into?
I mean, we don't know the businesses as well as these businesses know themselves, obviously, but we're there to give them guidance and understanding. So when you were working with Ricardo, he probably helped you understand better, some best practices or some things that other businesses do that are successful.
Ricardo is back there saying that he did it all.
He's nodding. He's like, no.
It's his baby.
But digging into data takes a lot of time. So some of us actually do spend a lot of time in helping and fixing or figuring out how to make it work better for you. But most of the time we're just here for guidance because you'll be able to know what is a valuable user for you, what is that event that you need to leverage in app event optimization. For example, you just said that your tutorial is long enough to show that there's value if you do it in one session. Whereas tutorials that last maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes is not enough or not enough meat for you to say this is a valuable user.
It's way too early in the process of you're not really onboarded, if you will, as a user typically. Depends on game sessions might be super short or anyway. But that's again, there's no recipe. There are best practices, to look into.
Exactly, and I mean,
but there are probably similarities if you guys, somebody like Facebook, because you have so much data available, you might be able to see some similarities per game genre, I would say.
There are best practices or per genre, but no two games is the same. And as you probably know, one best practice that you've experienced once on a game and you're going to try and replicate it might not work.
Yes.
So one of the best practices we have at Facebook is always testing and learning and iterating from that. You've probably had a situation where you tried to replicate something that worked before and...
Yeah, but I still find similarities per game genre because yes, there are differences if you go down, drill down very far, but there are, the core things that kind of apply to most if you apply to game genre.
Absolutely. Some things that are replicable, for example, are usually the structures. So the country structure, the approach of scaling, right? So you're going to start off with, on a soft launch, on a small market or a tier 2 market, test out, see how that works, and then use those learnings for your global launch, and then scale into markets with worldwide targeting and tiering systems if you want. But then when it comes to targeting specifically, it can really change. You can have a match 3 game, say I want to target people that love Candy Crush, for example, and it might work for one game, but it might not work for the other title you have because it's not that similar.
Yeah, 100%. Something else. You were featured, right, in many places with South Park.
Yeah, we were featured quite a lot in many countries. To be honest, I don't know how many, but I mean, naturally, thanks to South Park IP and how much work Matt and Trey did on their TV show. So
how much, like, would you say that has any impact on your Facebook strategy or UA strategy, that you're going to get featured? Everybody wants to get featured, right? But
but it's not guaranteed.
And it's not guaranteed, and like you can't trust like you would get. So, but would that change like any of the things you did for the global launch?
As a strategy, I would say that goes back to getting featured is one thing, but also the first 2 weeks, the honeymoon period. And of course, when you just go to a new market, and luckily if you do get featured, that's even better. That means our strategy would be to use as many channels as we can, and to buy as much as possible in a short period of time. So that doesn't mean that we have to bid high, because we didn't with South Park.
Because the featuring
don't want
helps
to throw numbers, but it was amazing. It lasted only 2 weeks, but yeah, okay, I will take it anyway. So featuring definitely, there is no proof. I can't put a number on it, and there is no tracking to featuring, so we can't say it. But if we look at baseline and look at the time when there is featuring happens in particular countries, you really see big spikes. I mean, it must come from featuring. So naturally, during that time, when there's a lot more marketing buzz, it takes more than one impression for people to download your game and try, and to go through that 35 minutes tutorial, right? So naturally, if people get comfortable and they see a few impressions here, there, and there, and they go like, oh yeah, I've seen that app somewhere. Let me try that out. And if friends play, even better, you know. So it does affect, and we don't put it into the UA like hard strategy if we get if we get featured, we're gonna do X, and if we don't get featured, we do. It's like if we don't get featured in some countries, but we still, South Park IP is strong, we will just need to push harder in the country. That's the strategy.
Like maybe other way around. Like if you when the honeymoon is over, right? When the featuring ends, like, did you have to aggressively like bid higher, or like, of course it's strategy also, like how many like impressions you actually want to drive, and whether you are already doing like far away with app events, etc. But like what will happen to you, like?
Yes. So. The life gets harder when the featuring is over, for sure, and when the honeymoon is over. And then it just depends on the business metrics. So it depends what the game target is, game goal. So if the game goal is to break even within the first 6 months, or to, I don't know, hit ROI positive after, 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, and by how many %, it's really a business agreement between, let's say, UA, finance, product, and BI. So BI looks at what we have right now. Then finance looks at what we need to gain, what we need to get from this game as on like P&L and all that side. Product looks at the pipeline and what we can do, and then UA goes, okay, is it possible or is it not?
And to that point, like, how has app event optimization changed that strategy for your UA? Because I feel like in the life cycle of the game, like it kind of changed the game. So I'd love to kind of get a sense of how you've leveraged it after feature, for example, without these organic. How did you manage to keep it going?
We keep going with app event optimization, also in combination with install ads and VO as well, value-based optimization. I don't think it's changed our strategy completely. It does affect the quality of the users that we get. So they say the LTV of AAO users are much better than install ads. But at the same time, we need volume. We need people. We need more people to play with each other. We need them to enter PvP mode. We need them to engage and have fun and enjoy the game before they start paying, maybe, and things like that. So it's always a marketing mix, I'd say. I wouldn't say that AEO would be 50% of the ad spend. Probably more than 50 would be still install ads. So AEO would be the smaller part of it, and the VO as well.
So there's a balance of like, you gotta need to fill the funnel with installs, and then gonna start up. I mean, you can optimize if you don't have installs, right? So it's kind of like it's an iteration. So, but I mean, we have like few minutes. We have like 5 minutes, and I still want to give a chance to ask questions for these great guys. So, but a couple of things before that. I mean, I'm going to pick back on the Instagram stories. And again, it's something that I kind of find that very exciting, the whole stories and then the growth of it. But at the same time, I haven't seen too many successful game campaigns there or built. So do you have any experience of like, give me a games company or campaign that have been very much getting great results on Instagram stories?
I'm just gonna give you the one I see on my phone when I always pull
fair
it out. I'm seeing the Playdemic ad right now with Clash, Golf Clash. And I mean, it made me download the game. So obviously what we see with Instagram stories that I think is very valuable is that like 1/3 of the people that are swiping through stories actually engage with the brand. So I think it's a very interesting metric to look at and actually to test. It's still new, right? Instagram stories for businesses has been like a year max. But we're seeing a lot of success. But what we're also seeing is that the performance metrics vary according to countries. So like I've personally seen success with Instagram stories in one market versus another because that market specifically interacted more with Instagram stories. I do think it's important to use it in the marketing mix. I think that using placement optimization allows you to feed into Instagram as well. So that's why I'm like all about placement optimization, but I do think Instagram story has that engagement rate that is very interesting for brands.
So would you say Instagram stories are better for branding or performance UA also?
I'm saying that placement optimization is great for performance. I think that branding is a whole different world as well. Like a brand like Ubisoft definitely will use branding differently than a mobile studio, which is much more driven on the performance metrics. When you're thinking about branding in general, more platforms is important because today we live in an omni-channel world. So if you're only on Facebook, you're limited to Facebook inventory. So branding is a whole different topic, but when we're talking about performance, I do think that adding in Instagram to placement optimization is crucial if you want to drive better performance because of the extra inventory.
Yeah, it makes sense. Last but not least, and a question that, Morgan, you don't need to answer if you don't want to. So just recently, you guys kind of announced that you're going to change the news feed. So it's going to be more about the people you engage with, more about your friends, less content from third parties, means less ads as well. So how does this impact Saikala when she's running her marketing? And you get 60 seconds, by the way. I know you can talk about an hour. And you don't need to answer, by the way. I mean, this is some stuff that I get a lot, from people like, what's going to change?
Yeah, I'm just very excited about this simply because it's Facebook has always been about the user experience first. We're always trying to develop our tools so that people actually enjoy the time they spend there and interact on the platform. As it pertains to your business specifically, I have no idea. It's a recent change, but we have teams that are really conscious about how businesses and individuals interact together. I'm sure we'll have a better sense of how it works down the road, but specifically on the impact of your business, I don't know. Sorry.
It would be good to find out, because in the past we knew that there is one impression per user per day. Unless it's published story from the fan page, then you get 2 impressions per user per day. I'm more interested in these kind of metrics, because then if I need to adjust my ad spend on Facebook according to that, or let's say expectations of how much we can spend profitably on Facebook, that would be very interesting.
I mean, right now in the ads portion on UA, like there's no impact at all. It's going to be more on the organic side. So on that front, I mean, right now I have no idea, but I really do think that it's beneficial for Facebook as a platform for people to enjoy time spent there, and ultimately it's going to be beneficial for businesses because these people are going to be engaged and be able to find meaningful content at the right time. And that's what you want as a game company, is to be in the newsfeed of someone who wants to play your game.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a healthy change, right? Something we need, but at the end of the day, this is obviously one of the concerns that people are not necessarily concerned, but like a question, like, is anything going to change? What's going to change? Do I need to double my budget or or not?
Ricardo's there for that.
Yeah, but that's it. Thanks, guys. We have a little bit time, I guess, for a couple of questions. Any questions? You don't need to ask anything from me, but these great guys. Marco, you always have good questions. Sorry, no need, no pressure.
Yeah, I'll bring the mic to you. Hold on.
That helped.
Thanks, Marco from Nordies. So when you mentioned the portion of budget, Seikala, going to mobile app installs, you said more than 50% going to mobile app installs. Was this in the phase of soft launch? And how does that share compare to when you're doing user acquisition for an older game? So now that you have also app event optimization and the value optimization.
Yeah, so for South Park specifically, mobile app install ads during the soft launch, and then the combination of both, even right now, even after the global launch is over, it's a combination of both, because South Park in particular needs a user base. You need the PvP mode, and you need to all of these. Then depending on some other games, for example, some other live games, like we have Horus Haven, Hungry Sharks, and all of them, they're a little bit more casual and different gender, I would say, more female style. For those, it's still the same combination. It really depends on LTV, because app event optimization and value optimization is more expensive when you measure just CPIs, so cost per day one retained or something like that. It's more expensive, so you would need to kind of justify the cost. And then in the end, you still need the volume for some of the games. I mean, otherwise, why do you have the business, right? So we will need to have a mix anyway. I would say on average 40–50% install-based traffic, and then the rest would be a mix of the rest.
Thanks.
Cool. Any more questions?
I mean, if we have a game one day that has LTV of $50, then I just go all in to a value-based. That's it. Yeah. And just bid $50.
Yeah. It's a tip of the day, right? Build a game with $50 LTV, right?
Yeah, but then we have to remember all the players, right? You can't grind them too hard, because you want them to come back to your game afterwards.
True that. Cool. Well, if no further questions, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks,
thank you
guys.
very much.
Pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Mika, Morgan, and Seikala.
Thank you.